Victor Davis Hanson, senior fellow at the Hoover Institute and host of Victor Davis Hanson in his own words. Sir, I'm almost at a loss of words for this.
Well, you can see it in the vocabulary too, because if you don't have racism as we know racism, then you have all these prefixes. It's systemic. You can't see it because it's supposedly everywhere, and only a expert like them, the Southern Poverty Law Center, you have to hire to find out where insidious or systemic racism is. Same thing with aggression. There is no aggression, but now they say, well, yeah, there's no racial aggression, but there's microaggressions, the way a person looks or a gesture. So the language has already facilitated the fact that when they made this binary under Obama, that 30% were victims and oppressors, and 70% were victims and the oppressed, and 70% were oppressors and victimizers. It didn't really work because there were more, there wasn't 30% just because you were not white. It was 30% supposedly because you were actually being oppressed, but you weren't. What I'm getting at, Carl, is that we didn't have enough oppressors or victimizers.
Right.
For the demand was bigger than the supply.
Right, but the other thing too is there was so little supply of actual racism that at one point,
yes,
when people like us were like, hey, this seems a little fishy and looks like it might be staged, they were like, denying white supremacy is white supremacy, and so is milk.
Yes, I know it. And that, again, all of these crazy words they created, safe spaces, theme houses for racially, it all got back to the idea that now there's civil rights, there's de facto equality, and yet we want special privileges for the elite of these different groups, the LGBTQ, blacks, Latinos, but we can't certify there's racism. So we've got to either hire people to be racist or change the vocabulary and say it's a teeny little bit, but it still hurts us. It's called micro, or there's no racist book, but there's a little bit of a trigger warning.
Right.
And they came up with a whole lexicon, and I think everybody's sick of it. I think I do think the DI is dying.
Yeah, well, I hope so. And when it's dead, I want to, kick it again. New York Times, though, this dropped right before this show. A new report saying that one of Platner's exes saying that he told her that rape was about power, and then if anybody ever broke in, he would rape them. These are his quotes, adding that, or these are her alleged quotes of him, adding that it would not be in a sexual way, not in a gay way. He was like, I would rape them to show them that I am dominant. Well, that's super weird.
I saw that article, I just read it, and it violated 3 of his promises to his Democratic colleagues who were, should we get rid of him? And he said no. And they asked him specifically, is there going to be another revelation? He said no, and there is now. And then he said, well, he's uncouth and he's rude, but he's not abusive to women. Well, he is abusive to women. They feel threatened by him.
Yeah.
And
well, he said that one was not in a gay way. So during Pride Month, he said it was. But
he also, I think one of the girlfriends felt that she felt threatened by him and the way he talked about women. So that was the second promise he violated. Then, of course, the Toten cop, he'd always said he was either drunk or he didn't know what it was, or it was the military's fault. But now we know that he was bragging about it. So he knew what it was. So those were the conditions under which the Democratic people had, they saved face by saying, well, he wasn't abusive. There's nothing more coming out. But Totenkopf, he didn't really know what he was. And that's all been confounded.
What's great?
I think they're going to I think the New York Times basically said we could lose this main seat. So we better go after him like we did Swalwell and get rid of him while we still have time.
Yeah, but what the best is watching all the senators right now, the Democrat senators, they're trying to dance around. Play this real quick.
I'm just going to answer the same way I just answered you. Anything I say is going to be played somewhere in Maine. Maine voters need to make this call. Once they do make the call, I'm sure I'm going to have some things to say. But as far as next Tuesday goes, that's the primary day. There's 3 names on the ballot. Maine Democrats will decide.
They don't even want to answer it, sir.
No, they don't. They're very vocal about anybody but themselves. And according to their own standards of behavior, this guy should be rejected. But they're embarrassed. Bernie Sanders has made a fool of himself. He's been the most prominent in saying that, you know, he fought for his country, and then you start to think about it, you think, well, yeah, so you're saying that anybody who fought for his country abuses women or wears death, and that's when 99.9% of our veterans didn't get tattooed with a Nazi head.
I sure didn't.
Like that's yeah, you didn't. But they're acting like it was normative behavior for everybody.
No, it's crazy. Victor Davis Hanson, pleasure, sir.
Thank you.
He loves the Constitution. He fights for what's right. He hates the bad guys. He's a freedom warrior. He's your freedom warrior. Watch Carl Higbie every weekday on Newsmax.